Welcome back to TLDR's daily briefing for Friday, the 27th of June, 2025. In today's episode, Budapest Pride vows to go ahead despite a government ban, Tuvaluans apply en masse for Australia's new climate visa, and Thailand re-criminalises cannabis. But first, Trump's defense secretary delivers a confrontational press speech amid reports that US strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities did little damage. Yesterday, US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth described last weekend's US strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites as historically successful, asserting that Tehran's nuclear program is now severely damaged. He also accused some US media outlets of irresponsible reporting after a leaked intelligence report suggested the strike's impact might have been limited. Referring to the leaked intelligence report, Hegseth stated it was a preliminary assessment and criticized outlets like CNN, The New York Times, and MSNBC for allegedly having an agenda to portray the strikes as less effective, claiming they only set back Iran's nuclear efforts by a few months. Hegseth accused these outlets of bias against President Donald Trump. He also criticized the fawning coverage of the preliminary report, which concluded that core components of Iran's nuclear program remain intact and that its uranium stockpile was moved before the strike. Hegseth didn't directly rebuke any of its conclusions, but noted that it had been labeled low confidence and that the press had exaggerated its significance. An investigation by the White House is reportedly underway to determine how the classified assessment was leaked to the press. Meanwhile, Trump has denied reports claiming Iran removed nuclear material from the Fordo nuclear site before the US bombing. On social media, Trump wrote, "Nothing was taken out of the facility," adding it would take too long, be too dangerous, and very heavy and hard to move. Instead, he suggested that the questionable vehicles at the site, photographed by satellite imagery, were used by concrete workers trying to cover up the top of the ventilation shafts. Hegseth and Trump delivered their remarks amid a defiant TV address earlier in the day by Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Khamenei stated that the US failed to achieve anything significant with its strikes. He also claimed victory over Israel, asserting that Iran delivered a heavy slap to the US by attacking a US base in Qatar. In a separate development, Iran has approved a bill to cease operation with the UN nuclear watchdog. However, the International Atomic Energy Agency has stated it has not been informed of any such change. Now, before we move on, just a heads up that this is the final daily briefing episode until July 9th, so there won't be any episodes from us for roughly the next week and a half. You're listening to TLDR's daily briefing. If you want more explainers on what's happening in the world, then you should check out TLDR's other channels. Today we released a video on why the US dollar has suddenly collapsed again. You can find this video linked in the description or show notes for this episode, or by searching for TLDR on YouTube or Nebula. Next up, tens of thousands of people are expected to attend the banned Pride parade in Hungary's capital Budapest on Saturday, even as Prime Minister Viktor Orban warns of legal consequences for organizing or attending marches. Over the past few years, Orban's government has enacted a series of measures and legislation that repress the LGBTQ+ community, including in March this year, when legislation was approved that gave police the power to prohibit public LGBTQ+ events, in quote, to protect children. The measures have been condemned as part of a wider crackdown on democratic freedoms and LGBTQ+ people in particular, but organizers say Saturday's Pride event will go ahead in defiance of the ban. More than 70 members of the European Parliament plan to attend, as are other European political figures, including the Spanish Cultural Minister, Dutch Education Minister, former Belgian Prime Minister, and former Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen expressed support for the community and called for Hungarian authorities to allow Budapest Pride to go ahead. Orban reacted by telling von der Leyen to refrain from interfering in the law enforcement affairs of member states. 1/3 of the entire population of Tuvalu has applied for Australia's new climate change visa since it opened last week. Tuvalu, a Pacific island nation of 10,000 people that is one of the lowest lying countries in the world, struck a world-first deal with Australia in 2024. It enables up to 280 Tuvaluans to move permanently to Australia each year to work, study, or live, with the relevant treaty referring to the existential threat posed by climate change. The visas are awarded through a random ballot of those who apply, and given the massive influx of applicants since the first ballot opened, it looks like the program will be significantly oversubscribed. more than 3,000 Tuvaluans have applied for this first round, according to data cited by news outlets, and this figure may rise by the time the ballot closes on July 16th. Finally for today, Thailand has banned recreational cannabis 3 years after becoming the first country in Asia to decriminalize the drug. The new order came into effect yesterday and reverts cannabis to a controlled substance that can only be used with a medical prescription. When it was decriminalized back in 2022, it sparked a cannabis industry boom that served both locals and foreigners alike, with farms, dispensaries, cafes, hemp spas, and other cannabis-themed businesses all benefiting, but these are now bracing for change. A new government formed last year, led by a party that promised to criminalize cannabis again. Critics say that decriminalization was rushed through and caused all sorts of problems, including a string of alleged smuggling cases involving tourists leaving the country, as well as allegations that poor regulation made it accessible to children and drove addiction. Now that's all for today, and as a reminder, we'll be back on the 9th of July, so we look forward to seeing you then. In the meantime, you can check out the latest episode of our podcast, the World Leader Leaderboard, where we discuss which heads of government are doing well and who's doing badly every week. You'll find those links in the podcast description. This was a TLDR news production hosted by Nadja Lovadinov, written by Nadja Lovadinov and Rory Taylor, and produced by Scarlett Watchorn. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again soon.